Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of Ideal Debating Marathon. This is going to be about structure of speeches and role fulfillment of speaker roles. So we do know that there are 3 speakers in each team, and each team has to have 3 speeches plus 1 reply speech. But with those speeches, you also have roles to fulfill, which means that it can't be a repetitive or rehash of the first speech. It can't be the same thing being presented in different ways. There are specific burdens given to each speaker so that we can make it more challenging, but we also make it more interesting in terms of how the debate actually functions, because we don't want the debate to be monotonous. We want the debate to actually fully flourish throughout the end of the 3 speeches, at least constructive speeches. But before that, we would learn how to structure your speeches and then what are the roles that you're supposed to fulfill. Now, when I say what should be the structure, I would say, and this is a meme that says good project structure comes with experience, but that's like a separate note. But the idea is that there is no right or wrong structure in WSTC speeches. But in order for the speech to look organic, in order for the speech to look for the speech to actually sound more sensible, and also for the judges to be able to follow it properly, you need to have some amount of structure in your speeches, right? Do you remember the kinds of matter, manner, and method that I told you? What are the ways how judges evaluate you? Yeah, the three criteria, the 3M principle. So it's called matter, manner, and method. Matter is content. Manner is the way how you deliver your speeches, and then you have method, which is why the structure is really, really important, because under method, you need to know whether your structure is good enough, whether your strategy to actually place arguments is good enough, which is very important for you to have good scores, which is why I think structuring your speeches is really, really important. But I think structuring speeches is very similar to how you actually write stories. So you have a good intro in a story, you have a good plot in the story, and then you have a climax, and then you have an ending, right? Similarly, in speeches, you can't necessarily have a climax, but you can have an introduction, body, and outro. This is really important because I think you want the judge to actually listen to you and want the judges to pay attention to you, which is why an introduction to what you're actually going to say is really, really important, because they're actively taking notes. But B, I think the body is obviously things that are considered to be arguments, which I'm going to take tomorrow. But so just for now, we're going to focus on introduction and outro. This is different for different speakers, and specifically the way how you're supposed to actually start your speeches and end your speeches. So ending is similar for everybody, but I think the way how you're supposed to start your speeches is different. But can anyone tell me what's the reference, the actual reference to the meme?
What they are called?
What
the speakers are called?
Oh,
WSTC? Do you mean that?
No. So it's basically if you want to get a good job, you are supposed to have experience, but I have used it in terms of you cannot essentially just have a good structure just by learning it right now. You will have to implement it a lot of times, because it's just really, really difficult to have good structure. I think even the best debaters don't have good structure, because the problem with good debaters is that their mind works really, really fast, and in order to structure it down in that time frame is really difficult. So I think you just have to practice a lot in order to have a good structure. But this is what the introduction for the first speaker is supposed to have. So today we're going to learn introduction and outro for all the 3 speakers. And then we are going to learn speaker roles of all 3 speakers. Okay, with introduction then, and what exactly are you supposed to use? Firstly, in the introduction, you're supposed to identify the burden of proposition and opposition. Can anyone tell me as to what burdens are? I mean, the slide says so, but what do you think inherently burdens are?
The arguments that they're going to present.
Okay. Any other answers?
Yeah,
I mean, whenever you
elements of argument, the elements of.
Okay, so whenever you say that, oh, I have a burden to do something, what does it mean? Why is it a burden?
Obligation, something. It's
so you're obligated to do a particular thing if you are given proposition or opposition. What do you think inherently defines the burden of motion? Do you think burdens of all motions are similar, or is it dependent on something?
It's dependent on something.
Okay. Do you have an idea of what it is dependent on? No? Okay. So do you know about prefix of a motion and suffix of a motion? So for example, the motion is T. Okay, have you heard about THW, THBT, THA, THS, THO?
Yeah,
Yes,
this house.
yes, house will, this house should, this house
believes in.
will.
Yes, so this house would, this house believes that, this house as an actor, this house supports, some opposes, etc., etc. These are just like the prefix before the actual like before the actual motion is given, right? So you understand the burdens of motion by the prefix that is given to you in the motion. Remember, like, have you ever seen how conventional debate topics are similar to the motions of parliamentary motions, but I think the only difference that you just add on these prefix towards those sentences. For example, we believe, this house believes that we should ban smoking, but as opposed to like a conventional topic would just be like, we should ban smoking, right? So the only difference between parliamentary or WSTC motions as opposed to conventional motions that have specific burdens attached to these prefixes, which means that you're inherently supposed to like fulfill a particular burden, and that burden is defined with that prefix. Now, what do I mean by that? I think I'm going to cover that in another session, but I think the idea is that in your introduction, you should inherently know as to what you're supposed to do on proposition, and what exactly are you supposed to prove by the end of your speeches on proposition, and what exactly are you supposed to prove by the end of opposition. Somebody is the register. Cool. So I think it should be clear as to what burden is. So burden is something that you're supposed to prove by the end of your speeches collectively as a team. And it is different for side proposition and opposition. More often than not, it's opposite for both proposition and opposition. So first thing is you identify the burden and you tell the judges as to what you're supposed to prove by the end of your speeches, okay? So that's the first thing. And I'm going to give you examples later. It's just the theory that you need to like feed in your head. The second thing that you're supposed to do is identification of problems. Remember, with all the motions in the world, there's some problem that the motion is trying to solve, which means that you oftentimes not say that, hey, this is the benefit on our side of the house. Why do we need that benefit? Is because there is a link towards a problem that you identify. You want to probably reduce that problem, you want to solve that problem, but why, like, what is that problem? We don't know, right? Which is why it's really, really important for you to actually identify the beginning of the speeches. So you actually have a roadmap as to like, where exactly are we going with the debate to begin with, right? So you identify the problem, you tell them the solution of the problem by your arguments. So this is the problem, this is the solution, and then you identify stakeholders. I want to spend some time on what solution is later on, but do you know what stakeholders are? I'm going to give you like an example later, but like tell me what you understand by stakeholders. Have you ever used this term?
Yeah, the ones who actually are impacted by the debate.
So you basically claim that, hey, they are the ones who are being impacted and they are going to be better outside the house. Or if you want to prove that, hey, they're the ones who are being harmed or vulnerable inside opposition, right? So yes, they are the stakeholders. So you have to also identify the stakeholders in the introduction of your speech. And this is for the first speaker, okay, remember. So who are the first speakers? Prime Minister and Leader of Opposition. So first speaker does this. Introduction to what is the burden, identify the problem, identify the solution, identify the stakeholders, and then you give a brief introduction to your arguments. Now, when I say just brief introduction, you're not supposed to like summarize your arguments. You're supposed to just give headings of your arguments. More often than not, and it's suggested, and I won't essentially bar you or like just give you that limit as to like what you're supposed to do, but more often than not, what ends up happening is that first speaker presents, so there are a total of 3 arguments in the team. First speaker says that our team is going to present 3 arguments to you today. First argument is this, second argument is this, and third argument is this. I'm going to deal with the first 2 arguments, and my second speaker is going to deal with the third argument. what it actually means is just list out the headings of your arguments. So the judges actually know that this is what I'm supposed to expect from the entire team, right? Note that it can be 4 arguments as well. It can be a division of 2 and 2 arguments between first speaker and second speakers as well. So there's no limit towards the number insofar as you're able to sufficiently prove it through the best extent, right? So I hope this is clear. Any questions on this? Because next slide is going to be examples.
So if the first speaker lists all the arguments which are to be mentioned in the entire debate by that side of the motion, so can the second speaker or third speaker not add at all to those arguments?
So I think one of the burdens for the second speaker is to add on to like some material towards the first and second argument that have been there. I think there are a couple of reasons. I think I'm going to deal with that in just like in the end of the session, but it's just that I think second speaker's burden in general is to do 2 things. One is to like add on and be the guard of the first speaker. So you're obviously supposed to like add on to the material that has already been presented by the first speaker. So it could look like additional analysis to the argument that are already being given by the first speaker. But secondly, I think rebuttals are to a very large extent, but also like the new piece of extension, which is probably the third argument that I already told. So a couple of things, but I think, yes, I think the question is very valid. Okay, any other question? Okay. I will assume there are none. We will move to, okay, actually, okay, let's just give you an example from, I think we do have an example by the end. We do have an example. We'll do it later, okay? So then you have introduction to the second speakers, okay? Second speaker, now imagine, try to like imagine with me, there's a debate happening. First speaker has already given all of the introduction arguments and the entire speech, okay, outro as well. Then the first speaker from opposition comes. He probably like identifies the opposite burden, identifies other problem, identifies other solution, etc. Stakeholders, yada, yada. So all of that is done. Now we come to the second speaker. What do you think the second speaker on proposition is supposed to do in the very get-go? So you know for a fact that the second speaker of proposition has heard the opposition, but the first speaker from proposition did not have the ability or the chance to hear any of the opposition speakers, right? So what the second speaker is going to do is first point out the biggest mistake on your opponents. What can it look like? It can just simply look like probably like identification of a wrong burden, or it could probably look like straw manning the debate. Do you understand what straw manning the debate is? So straw
fallacy or a strawman fallacy?
So strawman is just you understanding it very differently. So for example, like just definitions of the motion, it could look like you basically, if it is a motion about this house with banned shooting, opposition identifies shooting as like clicking pictures of animals rather than like shooting with guns. So it's just straw man, like it's just misunderstanding of the debate, right? Or it could just be like, if the motion is this house believes that in developing nations XYZ should happen, but opposition says, I think this debate is also about developed nations, I think it's straw man, right? It's just bad understanding of the motion. It's trying to skew the motion in such a way that proposition or the other, or the opponents aren't able to debate it well in the best capacity. So if that is the case for your first identification of the biggest mistake of opponents would be like, opposition in this debate did not understand their burdens well. They think their burden is this, but as we already told you that our burden in this debate is to do this, and opposition's burden in this debate is to do this. So you push that burden back on them, because then the judges are noting it back as to like, okay, this is what the burden actually was for opposition, but they're moving away from the motion. Let me not let them like move away from the motion, and let me just like note it down. First thing is this. Second thing, make a rhetorical remark of opponents' loopholes. What it actually means is that, for example, if you think that, okay, I think a lot of times people tend to understand the problem well, but not match the solution of the problem well. For example, opposition's idea is that we should not ban smoking, but we should just regulate it. And the problem is obviously that people get addictions and stuff like that. So proposition can say that I think opposition's biggest problem, or I think opposition thinks that just regulation of cigarettes is going to solve the problem of addiction without actually telling you as to how it is possible. So if you think there is a link missing between their arguments, I think that's inherently a rhetorical remark. But I think the moment when I actually see you guys debating, I think I can give you exact examples of what rhetorical remark you can use. But after that, I think then you're supposed to give a brief introduction as to what exactly is coming from your speech. So are you rebutting first? Are you giving extensions first? What is your speech going to look like? So most of the times people start with rebuttal and then go on an extension. So it could look like I'm first going to rebut, or I'm first going to give you or present targeted rebuttals on opponents, and then I'm going to give you one piece of extension, which could look like that one argument that the first speaker was telling about. So this is what the second speaker is. Introduction. So the biggest thing that you're doing here is like just a nutshell of rebuttal. So it's basically the biggest mistake or rhetorical remark on opposition. Then you give headings. So it looks like just introduction to your speech of like, okay, this is what is actually coming in my speech, so that the judge is actually hooked to your speech and knows what is coming from your speech. Any doubts from second speakers? No. Third speakers. I think it's similar to second speakers, because I think again you have heard, but I think like you have heard opponents, but I think the only difference is that you've heard more number of opponents than the second speaker, which means that you're more likely to actually make a comment on the entire opponents as opposed to just one speaker, right? So it's not just targeted to one speaker, but it's all like probably targeted to the entire team. So it could look like, so for example, if there's a contradiction in their team, or if there is lack of cohesion in their team, I think you can just point out me off like, in the beginning of your speech. I think you can be like, I think there is serious discontinuity in the speeches of opposition, because the first speaker identifies the burden as X, but the second speaker identifies the burden as Y, which really makes the debate really messy, etc., etc. So it's just like a entire remark on the opposition bench in general. But the second thing you're supposed to do is mention how opposition did not fulfill their burden. What it looks like is two things. One, the burden that you pushed on them, but secondly, the burden they identified for themselves. So I think debate on the best case or worst case both, which means that best case is like the burden that they identified for themselves. Did they actually like prove it? Did they actually make that roadway or like the path towards solution that they actually like identified in the first place? But secondly, did they actually debate on the worst case that you identified for them? For example, in a motion where it is this house would ban smoking, you push the button on opposition saying that if opposition can find out any other way to solve the problem of, let's say, addiction and health problems, etc., for like the people who consume cigarettes, I think they can win the debate. But they still do not do that. I think you can just understand as to why they lose the debate, etc. So this is just like you telling as to how they did not fulfill their burdens. You can't just simply say that, oh, opposition did not fulfill their burden. I think you have to prove to them as to how they did not. I think if you are doing that, I think you're also supposed to do the opposite, which means that how did you then fulfill your burdens? How did you prove as to what you identified in the beginning, and then how did you like make that roadway towards the end by the three speeches? Then go ahead and give your structure of your speeches. Are you going rebuttals first? Are you doing weighing first? Are you doing clashes first? I know all of it like just jargons of what weighing and clashes are, but weighing essentially is similar to your weighing machine. Like you compare as to which argument is more important in the debate and what should the judge actually care about. And clashes are like probably the things that people or both the teams are disagreeing upon. So you basically want to convince the judge that, hey, I think proposition is trying to claim that, and opposition is also trying to claim that, but I'll prove to you as to why proposition is better in that particular claim. So that's called you resolving the clashes, etc. Then this is just like similar. So first speaker gives introduction to what are arguments that are coming. Second speaker tells us to, okay, am I giving rebuttals to you first, or am I giving extensions to you first? And third speaker basically tells you the structure of like, am I giving rebuttals or am I giving weighing and then clashes? So this is what the structure of your speech looks like. This is an example for the motion. It's really, really easy. So if it is this house would ban smoking, the burden proposition is that it benefits, like what are the benefits of like ban on smoking? So if we prove to you that like banning of smoking is really like essential and beneficial, we should win the debate. But opposition to like why banning smoking is inherently bad. So, or why is it like it would lead to insolvency to the problem that exists. Then you say on proposition, the problem that we identify is that smoking causes health issues and addiction, but and therefore the solution in proposition is banning it. On opposition, what the problem is, I think it's two things. I think you can actually identify the same problem. So I think problem exists similar. like yes, smoking causes health issues, but is banning the solution for it is also like a question that you can do on opposition. So two things then, like two observations. One, you can identify a different problem and bigger problem to begin with, and then you have to compare as to which problem is more like harmful. But secondly, if you're identifying the same problem, tell us why proposition solution is inefficient. So if you identify smoking is exactly a problem, but solution is not banning it, I think that's also a very good stance to begin with. But I think it's more engaging in the first place, right? So you probably would give alternative solutions to that. And your alternative solutions could look like campaign against smoking, awareness programs, rehabilitation centers, increased taxation of cigarettes, etc. So this is what the solution or opposition looks like. So you're not in essentially banning it, but you're essentially cutting down the accessibility of like cigarettes to these people. And why then is it a better option, right? For that, you first have to tell the harms of banning, and then you're supposed to give us to why regulation is more important. Then your stakeholders can look like smoking industry, economy, people who consume cigarettes, etc. So this is the introduction for your first speakers. So burden on proposition, burden on opposition, problem on proposition, solution on proposition, problem on opposition, solution on opposition, and stakeholders. And then one thing, what are we missing in the introduction for first speaker?
Introduction of arguments.
Yes, so this is the list of arguments. So there are three arguments that we're actually going to present to you. First, smoking is bad for health. Second, smoking is bad for the environment. Third, smoke industries use child labor, which we essentially have to curb, etc. So this would be the introduction to the first speaker. Okay, this is your job right now. Do you have Google Docs? Do you know how to use it? Okay. Right now, what you're supposed to do is this house would ban plastic is your motion. Try to make introduction with all of these things, five things in your document and type it out in next 5 minutes. So your time starts. Okay, I'll give you the chance to open the Google Doc first and then do it. Let me know whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm on the same. I just have one device right now in front of me, so I'll have to close the camera maybe.
Okay, works. Also, you're not supposed to use Google, just say, okay?
I'm actually on an iPad, so I don't have Google Docs on this. So can I just use like Pages or Notes or anything to write?
Notice that.
Do we have to do it from both the sides, prop and op?
Only prop. Okay, should I start your timer? Okay, start.
Yeah.
Okay, that is the end of prep time. Are you all ready? I would want just give me access to the document on I have sent you the email. Okay, you all are supposed to tell me if you're done or you need more time.
30 seconds. Yes.
Nora, Akarshita, actually, and then Dora.
Yes.
If I don't receive the email by 6:10, which is already the time, I won't accept the assignment.
Can I just send it on WhatsApp? I think it's not loading on the drive.
Ma'am, where do I have to send it?
On the email, but I think if you want to send it on WhatsApp, you can send it.
I've shared it. Did you get it?
On WhatsApp?
No. Email.
Yes. Let me know if anybody else has sent the document.
Excuse me, what's the email ID?
It is on the chat box. Nora and Donna, did you send it?
Ma'am, have you received mine?
Let me check. Did you send it on email?
Yes.
I have received. Laura, is it okay for you to send it to me on like in Word format?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. I have received it by everybody. Just give me a second and try to copy it. Cool. Do you want to see your submissions? But before that, I mean, I would need some help from Donna. Could you help me in like telling as to which one is what? I think you did mention all the elements. I think you just like forgot to mention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did make all of them.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
can you just like just identify what is problem, what's what, and what is less
Yes.
what, so that I can just like write it right here.
So
Okay.
you can see the list of arguments there. The problem is at the top.
Okay.
Then, yeah. Then the solution is, if you scroll down a little bit.
Just a second. This is the problem. I also think this is the problem, according to you. Isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Cool. Then it is also
Then-
this problem.
Yeah.
Cool. And then
And then the solution would be that, yeah.
do you also want to tell me if you have burden on proposition and opposition?
You said to just do proposition.
Yeah, proposition.
Yeah. So this is a proposition.
Like the burden.
Yeah.
What is the burden on proposition?
So, burden of prop, it benefits the passing the motion.
Okay. So like the benefits of.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Cool.
Thank
Do you
you.
want? Let me just like evaluate everybody's thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Cool. We'll start from Akarshita. Akarshita. So it says, burden, save the environment, human life, and animal life. I think you obviously have to relate it to like why banning does it. So like, I think your end goal is that we would want to save environment and human life, and animal life, which is fair. But why banning leads to all of these three things is the burden. Then problem is, I think, is fine. Problem is all good. Solution is good, yes. Then stakeholders, people, plant. I think I have a problem with the stakeholders, and that's the only problem I have. So you don't necessarily have to have quantity of stakeholders. You just have to, like, if you can club them all together in one ambit, I think that's the best. So for example, I'm unsure as to what's the difference between plant and environment or marine life. So probably like just like make it an environment. So under that, you can probably like analyze it much better in terms of like, oh, it's better flora, fauna, etc. In marine life as well. Plastic manufacturing industry, I think good. So you can just make it as one plastic manufacturing industries and other industries line on it. That's it. So there are three stakeholders. You don't have to make it quantity, like you just have to make it like three, because at the end of the day, and I will tell you right now, because if you identify something as stakeholders, you have to necessarily prove by your speeches that it is benefiting all of them, or it is impacting in some or the other way, which means that you're taking more burden on yourself if you identify more stakeholders. Plastic is toxic. Okay. Okay, I think as of now, the arguments are fine. I won't say any like that there's any problem with this. I would, however, suggest, and this is, and because I haven't taught you yet, so it's supposed to be very short. Your arguments are supposed to be just like six word sentence max. The reason why is that, and I just told you to just give introduction to your argument. You're probably gonna like read two sentences, just a lot of time. So your assertion is supposed to just be like 6 word sentences max. Okay. This is something I was supposed to teach you tomorrow, which is I'm not like saying anything to this because I think it's just really good for anyone who did not know it. So I think good job. So good job, Akarshita. Okay. Cool. Moving on to Nora. Burden on proposition. Okay, good. Problem. Good. Solution. Do you want to like make economy the stakeholder only, like that too on proposition?
We can also do like the environment and
Okay. I mean, I think economy is going to be harmed much more on proposition, but I would want to know. Okay, let's just first see your list of arguments. We'll come back. Plastic is bad for environment, creates lots of environment. Okay. Plastic is bad for our health. Okay. Kills ocean. Okay. Again, I think environment, this all of it can just come here. But I think recycling, I think that's a good point. I think I was just like looking for one argument that could probably harm like economy. I think that's fair. I mean, it's okay for you to identify economy as stakeholder. So did you see why it's important for you to make at least one argument to prove that your stakeholders are important, rather than just like you say, hey, stakeholder is this, but like not making any argument on that? Which is why when we talked about like plants or like environments as stakeholder, but you still like talked about it. I think that's why stakeholders are important in the first place. So I think good job. But just remember that again, like the same thing, like shorter argument assertions, like the headings are supposed to be shorter. But I think in terms of like, if you can club a lot of things that are similar and has similar reasoning, I can just club it all together and just say that it's just bad for environment, or like it's just bad for flora and fauna, rather than just like trying to talk about different things. However, I would want to make a note here. I don't think economy is the most important stakeholder on proposition, because on proposition are probably harming economy much more, because the amount of like taxes that government actually gains, or revenue that government gains from cigarettes, is much more than anything else, which means that the moment we ban it, I think the economy is going to be harmed really bad. So I think that's the only problem. Otherwise, I think good job. Cool. Good. Solution is fine. I think I've already read most of it. Do you have stakeholders? Did you miss it? Okay. I'll give you the chance to actually identify the stakeholders. Tell me what you think is the stakeholders. Link it back to your arguments.
Industries and aquatic animals.
Okay. Okay, works. Cool. Okay, works. I think good job. I think no problem. Just remember from next time, just follow the structures. That's easier for me to like evaluate. Okay. All right, then we have Shrishti. Okay, burden minute. Okay. I think it's rather like I would call this like the problem more than like the burden, because I think, are you saying that you have to prove the harms of plastic as your burden?
Yes.
I think that's fine. Cool. I think then again related to like why banning is necessary. So you first say, because I think you're already telling why plastic is bad in problem, so you don't have to repeat the same thing. So you would want to make it more positive. It's like, why? What's your burden? So your burden is to like identify, to prove the benefits of banning, and then say that okay, this is the problem, which is why I'm banning it. Which is fair. Okay, ban plastic. Stakeholders fine. I think good job. Good. I think good job. Good job. I think you all did pretty well. I would give up a average to everybody. Cool. I wanted to actually do it with you and along with you on a different motion. I thought you wouldn't essentially do this well, so I thought I'll do it in front of you, but I think we will have to do it on a different motion now. Let's do it. You want like a difficult motion right now, because I think you're doing pretty well in like average motions.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Okay. So this house supports yes parenting. Yes parenting is when parents essentially say yes to most of the things that children actually say, so or ask for. The fiat is that you don't say yes to things which are dangerous for your kids, for example, drugs, alcohol, like late night parties, etc. So what do you think is the burn-on proposition? And I'm going to,
Ma'am, they don't say yes to that.
no, you don't say yes to that.
Okay.
Quick, just answers. What is the burden proposition?
The benefits of adopting yes parenting.
Okay, why? Opposition.
Why we should not adopt yes parenting.
Or is it that we should
The
have
harms.
parenting?
Sorry?
Is it we should not have, we should rather have no parenting, or is it the harms of yes parenting?
The harms of yes parenting.
The harms.
Why not no parenting?
Because I think we are in a way diverting away from the main topic here.
Good job. Yes. So you just have to say why should we. So one side says the benefits, one side says the harms. Good job. Next, what is the problem that we're identifying?
The parents would let the children do some bad things like alcohol, drugs,
But
because they
we already-
can't say.
That is excluded in yes
So
parenting.
we already said that's not a part.
But like, if you do too much yes, like if you keep on saying yes to each thing which a child wants, you'd like get spoiled and would get like bratty and like
Yes.
develop an attitude and like start arguing and lot.
Okay, yes.
Right for the world, which is difficult and does not cater to your needs always.
I think in general, the problem is bad parenting. Like,
Yeah.
there exists a problem of bad parenting and bad relationship with like parent and child relationship, which is going to be like a problem in both sides, in my opinion. Or do you think there is a different problem that you identify in our position?
There wouldn't be any boundaries.
Okay. I think I would also, like, irrespective of whether the motion says that we are excluding things like harmful. So we would still bite the bullet and say that why it's still not likely. It's not likely to, it's still unlikely that parents are going to let their kids do yes for every single thing. So our solution is going to look like, I think, okay, what would the solution be like? If it is yes parenting, and you also want to like clarify in your debate that we're not going to say yes to every single thing, what would you say on your solution?
We would try to make the child understand that these things could be harmful for them, so they do not ask for it.
Okay.
They can also set some rules and explain it.
Okay, so you just clarify, like clarify.
Senses as to if you do this, this will be the consequence of it, and thus for your betterment, we do.
I think also that parents would never say yes to things that are likely to probably like harm their kids anyways. So it's in the interest of parents to not like actually do it regardless. But let's say the problem in opposition is that
It creates a disconnection from the child.
so weak parent and child relation already like tries to accommodate that.
Yeah.
But another problem that I've identified that kids don't like listening. How would you solve it?
Can maybe say like how this actually benefits you, and like how it doesn't matter to them what happens, but like it benefits you and it's like only for your benefit.
Okay, I think one of the answers already came from you guys. Like I think that's for sure the answer, but I think one of the answers also came from you guys when you said that saying no is going to be accompanied by why you are saying no, rather than like just plain no's, because you can tell benefits and harms of a thing. So why is it okay? Why do you think it's likely to be a better solution? Like, why do you think just giving reasons to your children is a good idea?
Because
Yeah,
then they understand why we're doing that, and they're not repeatedly asking the same questions.
And they don't feel like they're being antagonized. They know that it's for my betterment, and when they have solid reasons for what is being denied to them.
Okay, Donna, what were you saying here?
If we
I
give
was saying
reasons,
that the kids would understand more and they won't make a big fuss about it, and
Yeah.
understand that they're doing it for their betterment and they're doing it so they can be safe.
Okay. No, did you have something else to say?
The funny thing about kids is the more you say no to them, the more they'll actually do that thing. So you should just like make them understand why this is actually helping you and why it does not harm you and how it benefits you in general.
So a combination of what you all said is that children are curious. So when you tell them why, their curiosity stops as opposed to like making them more curious to like, oh, let me just try it. If mom says no, I think I should try it for sure. So I think that is the reason. Okay, let's go to stakeholders first. What do you think are the stakeholders? Who do you think are the stakeholders?
Of course, the children, the parents.
Parents.
Yes. I think, I mean, you can just like simply know.
Family. Yeah, it could
Yeah,
also be family, the people around them.
Yes, probably like friends, family and friends, kids. I think you can simply have these three and you can just be done with it. I don't think there is a specific need why you should have. I think this. Okay, cool. Tell me list of arguments then. What do you run? Why should we say yes?
The kids will have a better relationship with their parents and get to know each other more.
Why do you think yes, saying yes makes them get to know
So
you?
they'll be in a fun environment and they'll be enjoying and having a good time.
Supportive environment? Okay.
As it builds up the trust and respect between each other, that's where you should say yes.
Okay. Why do you think parents are likely to say no to like most of the things that you do? So, for example, you don't want vacation because like I don't know what reason, like, they just say no. But what if they just say yes to you? I think you're more likely to experience more things in your life, but you're also more likely to take accountability of your own actions. So you become more independent as a child. Okay, let's go to a list of arguments on opposition then. Are you guys more towards no parenting? Like, what kind of parenting do you guys face?
Definitely no parenting.
No parenting, okay. The presumption is no. Tell me, why should we not say yes to most of the things that you're asked for?
Because when we're small, we say like very like weird things because like at that time we're very curious because we don't know that much about the world. So we can say very dumb things like, can I eat this? Like, can I eat Play-Doh? Can I paint my hair? Can I dye my hair? Stuff like that. So that can like make you worse.
So it's primarily for the safety of the children.
Yes, so can expose subjective
And-
things of the world.
yeah,
I mean, in
and-
like directly, it probably isn't a harmful thing, but it's actually a harmful thing in longer run. For example, yes, drugs is the most direct harm, but I think just it's not just drugs, right? It's just indirect things like I want to like have multiple sleepovers at my friend's house every week. I think it's just a red flag. So
And also, when you keep saying yes to a child, they'd be very independent and they would not accept no for answer.
yeah, so they become stubborn.
Yeah, they become very stubborn and bratty and spoiled.
And also, I think
And they
also-
can have problems later in life when they grow up and they're not under their parents' guidance anymore, because then you don't ask your boss for a raise and he just says yes to it.
so
Exposed to the harsh realities of the world.
no habit of listening to no. I think so. Good job. I think we did pretty well in terms of what the instruction should look like. I would most of the times give you like the structure in very tabular format because it's just really good in terms of like you being able to understand it, but also making speeches. So, but for this, I think good job, everyone. Okay, let's now move towards session. Cool. Then what exactly is supposed to be the body of your speech, which I'm not going to cover at all. It's just for you to know right now. It's assertion, reasoning, and example. So arguments are supposed to have three elements in your speech, like in your arguments. One is assertion, one is reasoning, and example. So all of the list of arguments, the headings that we did were essentially assertion, and assertion is supposed to be really, really small, which is why I said I did not teach you yet, so I'm not going to like reduce your marks for that. So yes, this is what is supposed to be taught to you as well. Moving on to outro then. Recap the most important point that you actually made in your speech. For example, your second speaker and your extension was about XYZ. You would probably rehash that and repeat that and say that in my speech, I told you as to why banning of plastic is really important for the economy, which is why we judge vote for us. I think what you then did here is that you reminded the judge that I've proved this point, and this point is really, really important. So you probably like would give a rhetoric as to why the judge would care about it and why the judge would vote for it. But I think it's also important for you to know as a debate jargon as to what you're supposed to use as an outro. For example, if your proposition, government affirmative, say at the end of your speech is proud to propose or proud to affirm or proud to stand on the side of government or proposition, you can basically use any like permutation and combination and say whatever you want to. I've also seen people saying, I rest my case, but not my stance. If you want to end your speech like that, I think you can do so, but it's just like very effective in terms of manner. So if you're on op, negative or con, you say proud to oppose, proud to negate, or proud to stand on side opposition. I think outro is very straightforward. I don't think you should have a question, but if you have, just let me know. If not, I will now move towards the speaker roles. First speaker is supposed to have four things. One is characterization. Second is argument intro, which I told you like the list of the arguments, then analysis to the arguments, and then conclusion. Conclusion is nothing but your outro, okay? So characterization is basically a combination of introduction and definitions to the motion. For example, in your characterization, you explain to them as to what your burden is, identification problem, etc. But while you're identifying the problem, did you notice that, like, I think it was Donna who mentioned that, like, there are a couple of like, I think it was a little bit hint of what is happening in the world. So, like, what is the status quo and why does the problem exist in the status quo? I think that's what you're supposed to do in your identification of problem as well. That's called you defining the status quo. So when you define the status quo, it's just really easy for the judges to know that, okay, this is a problem in real life and we probably need to solve that, because you create that urgency for the judges. So in characterization, it's a combination of introduction, but you do two things more. You actually add on the definition of the status quo. What is the status quo? How does the world look like? But secondly, you also add on definitions of the motion, which is really important. For example, if the motion talks about developing nations, what does developing nation look like? Why, like, what is their characteristic? Why is it necessary for the motion for you to understand it? Or for example, you just defining certain terms. For example, what would the ban look like, right? Because most of the dishouse motions are policy motions, where you're supposed to give models to the motions, right? So when I say model, that means that you're supposed to tell us to, like, the mechanism as to how the ban would be implemented. So what are you banning? Are you banning the sale of it? Are you banning production of it? Are you banning the manufacturing of it, etc., etc.? But what would be the repercussion of the ban? So the repercussion could look like jail or like imprisonment for 10 years, or it could look like just fining the owner of manufacturing industries. But what else can you do? You would actively raid towards these industries to make sure that the ban is implemented properly. Because I think the, like, one kind of plastic, when it was banned, I think I saw police, like these like officers just actively going towards like shops and making sure that they are not possessing any kind of plastic in their plastic polythene, I think polythene bags in their like shops. So I think that would look like that. That's what it would look like in order to make sure that it's being actively followed. Then you would give argument intro, which means that here are three arguments that we're going to present on side proposition. And then you would give my first argument is this. I have three reasons to believe in that, like on that argument. And then you give the reasoning, and then you move to the second argument. I would tell you as to how you're supposed to present your reasoning, what is supposed to be in your argument later. But just remember, analysis to the argument is just you justifying your argument, like the heading in the first place. So probably you'd probably use statistic examples, etc., to prove your point. Then you have conclusion, which is the outro. Then you have second speaker. Second speaker could do multiple things. One is target rebuttals to opponents. it's really, really important for the second speakers to actually use targeted rebuttals, because if you just leave it to the third speaker, I think the third speaker has so much more to do. Third speaker is also supposed to resolve the clashes. So you essentially should like just get done with the rebuttals in the second speaker, from like rebuttals to who? Rebuttals to all the speakers that you've heard now, right? For example, second speaker of proposition is going to rebut the first speaker of opposition, but second speaker of opposition can rebut both first speaker of proposition and second speaker of proposition, right? So you would want to, if you want to combine their arguments, you can do so, but if you want to give targeted rebuttals, you can also do that. Can anyone give a guess as to what targeted rebuttals are? Okay, Nara.
It's basically a rebuttal like towards that specific opponent. Like supposing you're on the proposition team and you're like targeting that particular topic on the opposition team, and you'd basically target one opponent.
Okay, so it is basically you targeting a particular argument and mentioning that and then rebutting it. For example, proposition said this, but we think X, Y, Z in order to rebut that. But there's another kind of rebuttal called as integrated rebuttal. So integrated rebuttal is when proposition and opposition is trying to claim the same benefit. So the benefit is that, hey, I think we need to solve the problem of like plastic being a problem by banning it. So you're both trying to like claim the same benefit, like, oh, like the environment should be benefited and stuff like that. But on opposition, you would probably rebut it this way. I think most of my arguments are then going to be integrated in my case. So I don't necessarily need to like point out that the argument and say that, oh, this is why this benefit is better in our city house. What I would do is that I would give targeted rebuttals first, and then I will give integrated rebuttals to a case, which would basically look like presenting my own argument. So it's just not specifically to a particular argument, but it's just like inherently into your case. So it would look like you telling us to like just comparing as to why regulations are more like regulations are better than ban. That's inherent like integrated rebuttal in your case, right? So you don't essentially have to like point it out. You just have to say that, hey, the rest of my rebuttals are just integrated in my case. The second thing is supposed to be structure your rebuttals in order of priority. I have an like example here. For example, A, B, C. Okay. There are three rebuttals that are being, no, there are three arguments that are actually being given by proposition. Let's say it is A, B, C. They spend the most time on B. A is assertive, C is good and has some like logical claim. Which argument are you likely to rebut first?
A, because it's assertive
A.
and
Yeah, it's A.
Why?
because it has no analysis. It's
Because it
assertive.
doesn't have that much information on it.
Okay, so what would you say? How would you rebut?
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, I was saying that because A is assertive, and we can mention that there is no proper analysis for the same given by the.
Okay. So you would just say, you would just point out that hey, A is assertive and therefore do not credit it. But the most important rebuttal here is actually B, because proposition has spent the most time here and you need to actually take it down, because if you do not take it down, even if it's the worst claim, it's just credited. So then what you're supposed to do is look and listen to what your proposition is like strategically placing. So B is the argument that they've spent the most time on, which means that they have probably reasoned it out. They have probably like impacted it much more. So you rebut that first, and then go on to the argument that you think has been given a good reasoning. So the reason as to why it is important then is that it's likely that if you just say, hey, A is assertive, and that's my like rebuttal for that, I think second speaker from proposition can just go on and give reasonings to that, and then you just left that entire argument on the get-go. So it's just like you doing it on the worst case scenario. So do not assume worst case of proposition. First try to rebut the best case of proposition, then go on to their worst case. Because when you're saying that A is assertive, I think yes, you're probably like pushing a burden on them, but do it on the last, right? I mean, you can just like push the burden later, but you're supposed to first take down B and then C and then A, because most time, because in judge's head, they have already taken down B, and they think that it's the winning argument of the debate. But according to you, you think that A, it's assertive. Let me just like take it down because it's easy. Don't think that in your head. So structure your rebuttal in such a way of like in the order of priority of the argument that proposition gives, as opposed to what you think is the priority. I think somebody has had a question.
I had a question
Hmm.
that if they have researched mostly on B and they confirm B, why shouldn't we confirm A? Then they should put all their attention on A and confirming it.
Okay, so because they have spent the most time in B, if you take it down first, it's easier for the judges to like then buy other arguments, because I think there's inherent conscious bias of the judges because they've heard B for a longer period of time. So even if you present to them, okay, B some of the judges have got, but even if on opposition you would like present A, C, D, E, I don't think it has a lot amount of like convincing ability. So what you would want is first clear that like conscious bias from judges' head, and then go on and present better arguments, because then it's easier, right? For example, I think it's similar to the idea that try to rebut things which you think have harmed your case the most. So if somebody has kicked you, you would probably want to recover from that kick before you actually kick them back. So I think that's what the idea is. I hope that's clear.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, cool. Then you would want to rebuild your first speaker's claim. This is where I think Shrishti, I think who's like argument or question was like Akrishita, I don't know. But I think the idea is that you want to you want to be the biggest guard of your first speaker. We also call it simp. So you're supposed to simp on your first speaker as much as you can, which means that you're supposed to like fill in the gaps of your first speaker. So it could look like you giving extra pieces of analysis to the argument that are being given. For example, your first speaker talked about first and second arguments properly. So what you would want to do first is like give extra reasons to believe in the same thing. So extra reasoning is different reasoning, different metrics altogether, extra examples, new examples, etc. But secondly, you would give extension. So extension would look like you giving new argument, new reasoning, which is like completely different from your first speaker. So rebuild and extend. Why do you think rebuilding is important? Is simply this. I think first speaker has already given arguments and opposition has probably like rebutted them in some manner or the other. Because judge has first written that, okay, proposition has given me this, but opposition comes and says, and takes down all of those claims. I think judge then is in the inherent bias that, oh, I think those arguments are already taken down, which is why you're probably supposed to give more reasons for the same arguments to the judge, so that the judge is like converted back to your side again, which is again like the conscious bias that you want to remove again and shift them back to your side. Then I think extension and then conclusion. So first rebuttals, I mean, it's just like speaker role, right? You can just like shift it however you want to. So you should give like rebuttals to your opponents. You should give rebuilding to your first speaker. You're supposed to give extension and then your conclusion to your speech. Any doubts here then? If not, we'll move to third speakers. Third speakers, again, I think you have heard like you're supposed to rebut, obviously. So you're supposed to rebut anything which is left unrebutted. So if you think your second speaker did not rebut the first speaker, you're supposed to rebut that part of the first speaker's speech. But also if you think what is the most important in the debate, but also if you think even if your second speaker has rebutted something, but it's not efficiently rebutted, you would probably want to give a new rebuttal to the same argument of opposition. Then you would want to give summarization of your claims. What did you like prove by the end of your speeches collectively? So you probably want to give a slight rehash with new analysis and new examples of your own arguments. Then you would want to give a stakeholder comparative. Where is the stakeholder better off? Where is environment better off when you ban the plastic or when you regulate it? Where are people more better off, or where are industries better off, etc., etc. You would want to like make that comparative as to like where the stakeholder is benefited the most. For example, in the parents and children motion, where are children the happiest? When you anyway actively tell them yes, or when you are likely to tell them no sometimes, etc., etc. So then you would go on and rebuild, which means that you can, when you're actually summarizing your arguments, you can actually give them more reasoning and more like examples to the existing arguments. But one thing that you cannot do on third speaker is adding new argument at all. So you cannot give an like altogether new argument in the third speech, but you can give new analysis and new examples to the existing arguments that are being presented by the first two speakers. Then you're supposed to give clashes of debate. Why did you win them? So if proposition is talking about, let's say, support of parents, and opposition is also talking about support to the parents, why do you win that clash? Why support more on your side of the house? Is something that you're supposed to do. Then you're supposed to give weighing, which means that why is your argument of, let's say, better career of children more important than any other arguments in the debate. It is likely to happen in a panel debate that all of the arguments are presented and well managed, but aren't engaged on. So proposition is saying something else, opposition is saying something else. So at the end of the day, you don't want the judges to actually end up being in the debate. So what you would want then to do is that you would want to basically tell the judge that, hey, yes, 10 arguments have been presented to you as third speakers. Let me tell you as to which argument then you should buy the most and which argument is the most important in the debate. Then you would conclude as to why the judge should vote for you, which is what the third speaker is supposed to do. Any questions on third speakers then? No questions. Then fourth speaker. Fourth speaker is basically the reply speaker. So reply speaker is the biased judge in the speeches. So for example, reply speech is supposed to be given by the first, second speaker of the debate. But what you're supposed to do is just prove two things, that you win the debate and oppositions lose the debate. You can choose either of those strategies. I've seen debaters just actively pointing out all the flaws on opposition and then proving why they lose the debate. I have seen debaters just actively telling us to why you are the best and you fulfill all the burdens and which is why you're the best. But you can do both, right? So you can just spend 2 minutes in why your side has fulfilled all the burdens and why your side has proved something as opposed to opposition has proved nothing. But also just sell the case to your adjudicators. You just list out all the benefits of your side, your impacts, why your impacts are important, but opposition, you can just say that why, let's say these are impacts are more important, not important, but harms of opposition. So at the end of the day, what you're doing is just telling the judge as to why the judge should vote for you. You can do it clash by clash analysis. You can just tell them, okay, these are the clashes that we win. You can just also bite the bullet and tell them that this is the clash that opposition won, but this clash is not the most important clash in the debate, which is why we should still win the debate anyways. So you can probably make that declaration in your speeches as well, but do this only when you think the debate is really, really close. And if you think it is just strategic to make that concession. I think that's pretty much it in terms of fourth speaker. Do you have any other doubts then?